During the live stream of this episode, we had some technical difficulties, which resulted in losing parts of the audio here and there. Thanks to the magic called editing, we were able to save most of it. The first 5 minutes contained some cuts and fades. After that, mics were changed, and it was all smooth sailing from that point on. Have fun watching this episode of Jasper's Laboratory.
There we go. Welcome to another Jasper's Laboratory. I've been in the mood for a week. I've been thinking of what I wanted to do for this session. I even said it yesterday on the Precipice of Dreams that I wasn't sure what I was going to talk about. I have a list of like 50 topics that I can discuss, but something happened to me during the last couple of weeks that made me think of what I really wanted to do. I saw my own episode from 2 weeks ago. I did the party versus party, some justice in that. But then I thought, what did I start this channel for? And the thing I wanted to do with you all was session preparation. And so I have been thinking what it really means and what it means to me. And for me, it is a very deep delve into all the lore that's stuck in my head and that I want to get on paper, and at least I want to get it into players' heads. And the thing I kept saying to all of you is that you should keep it simple. And the thing is, I don't do that, and I've allured, is that the right word? I don't know, to that myself, that even if, as I'm saying this, I'm not a simple DM myself, and I want to, when I first thought of the show, I really wanted to tell you something about the session preparation that I would do for my next true real life session, where I would explain to you what goes into that, and the information still stands, don't get me wrong. I'm proud of the content I've created, but I think I've drifted away somewhat from my norm to show you, and that is actual session preparation. So for an actual session, what happens during a session? We'll be talking about my journey as a dungeon master, where I'll explain my own dungeon master experience into the dungeon master experience I have today. So I'll be starting this journey today when I'm 11 years old, and I'll end it when I'm about 39 years old. I'm 39 right now. Ashley says, I sense lots and lots of lore coming. I'm getting it might not be a real lore episode, but it will be kind of meta lore episode where and I've allured to this, I'm using the word again, I don't even know if I'm using it the right way, during Talking Void, where I've told snippets of what I did in the past to develop, what I did in the past and didn't do in Cavern episode is a really good example of that, where I tell you my distaste for how I've used them as well. And in Talking Void, I've lifted the veil on my first adventure, I think. I told you about DMing the night below and what it brought me, and the escapes I put into that adventure to make it interesting for a long alluded. Thank you. Word. It sounded so strange to me when I alluded. Thank you, Ashley. And so tonight I'll be, and I really hope you like it. And if not, that's okay as well. But I think we'll be doing a three-parter. I'll be talking about my DMing, the adventures that I've DM'd during this episode. Next episode, I'll be talking about T, which is one of the three parties I am currently DMing, although two of them are on a kind of hold because I'm too busy with Voidcast. And then the next one, I'll be doing the session preparation for my next Dramour session, which might be kind of a combination of the session I will be having next Friday and the session after that one. Don't know yet. It will be in 4 weeks, so you know what can happen in that many weeks. You know, I really wanted to get this out of the way from the very start of this episode, but I suddenly realized what I wanted to tell you. But before we start all this, let's first do a bit of socials, and we have the Twitch, we have the YouTube, and if you like what I'm telling you, and if you like what we're doing on our other shows, please follow us, subscribe, even throw some subscriptions our way. You know, be gentle, be wholesome, be in love with us as the Voidcast. I don't know. Think of something why you should be following us. Hopefully it's because of the content. And then in the end, I hope we've had a nice evening together. And yeah, that's about it for the socials. We have a Discord and everything, but you can see it in I wanted to say doobly-doo, but in the subtext for the YouTube videos. And there's another Dungeon Master Corner up from Roger on Discord, which is very interesting as well, which discusses character dev. The other thing is, next Monday we'll have kind of another thing going for us, and I'll be showing you what we'll be doing then. So here you go. Anyway, that was the introduction to our special one-shot with Ashley as our silver judge. We'll be doing the outlaw thingy, where one-shot where I'll be playing Veloce Amoris, which is probably an abhorrent way to say something in Italian, and means fast love. I don't know how I will be playing that, but I'm loving it already. Here we go. And back. Okay. How is this? Well, I think the audio is okay right now. So let's see if it will not cut out this time. I think the audio quality should be less than normal, but who knows, right? So, man, I really have to get into the mood now. I got the... Michel, you really will be having a job out of this episode, but we'll be talking DMing anyway. Yeah, this is better, but that really frustrates me because I have such a good mic and everything. You know. Okay, but when I was 11, from Sinterklaas, which is a Dutch thing, and actually from my father, I got the red box from Dungeons and Dragons. It was a beautiful box with a dragon on top of it. I opened it and I saw these 4 or 5 booklets in it, and the set of 6 dice. And there might even have been a pencil in it. I don't know for certain. Well, I saw these things. I flipped through them and I thought, what do I have to do with this? I have no idea. And without actually reading it. I put it into my book on a bookshelf, and I didn't look at it anymore for quite a while. But then, when I had nothing left to read, this was the early 90s, so we didn't have computers that did things that we can do now. I actually picked up the book again, and I started reading it. And there was this part at the start of the book, the Player's Handbook, of the Speler's Handbook, which had this small sample of a dungeon master with a couple of players. I think there was a dwarf and an elf and a human or something, and it who did stuff. And it was a conversation, and the conversation was great because I think in the end they encountered a monster, but before that they were just going through a couple of corridors or something, and it was really spooky. And then it had my attention, and so within a couple of days I think probably not even a couple of days, but I had read through the Player's Handbook, kind of read through the Monster Manual and the Dungeon Master thing, but I didn't read that as carefully as I did the Player's Handbook. But I took it to school. I had a couple of friends who took a liking to it as well, and we took it home to one of my friends, and I started being a dungeon master, because that's what you do when you're done with the game and the others haven't read the rules yet or are too lazy to use them. We were 11, of course. And so I started drawing my own maps. I put in a lot of creatures because I had misinterpreted the rules for the dungeons, for the dragons, for any monster really. I thought hit dice were hit points, and I thought that a character could hit every person in the room before the character itself would... before the monsters would get a chance to hit the character. So there were all these kinds of strange things. And we had a lot of fun for a while. Then the strange thing happened where one of the player's little brother started to be a dungeon master as well, and made adventures that had millions of gold pieces in it, and that became kind of the thing. Where the adventure that had the most gold in it was the one that was getting played, and so we just started adding gold, and it made no sense. Hey there, sorry that I'm late. Baby duty. I seem to have picked a good night to join, not taking into account the reason. Hello, Vechel. Welcome to the show. Yeah, we had a rough start, man, but we are here now, and I think this mic is doing its work as it should. So we were playing this game, and I think that after a certain amount of time, we kind of lost sight. We switched schools. We went to a secondary school and of middelbare school, as you call it in the Netherlands. And some of us left, were not in the picture anymore. Some of us, the friendship didn't last for that moment. And we started middle school, and we were not dungeon master, playing Dungeons and Dragons anymore. And that was a really sad period because I was kind of lonely at that point, and I really wanted... Well, I don't know if I really wanted to play the game, but at least there wasn't this connection that I really would have liked to have. And then when I was 15, this new guy came to my school. I don't think he's in chat right now. Let me see if he's in chat. No, he's not in chat right now. He was here last time on Jasper's Laboratory. And I thought, well, this is a guy I'm going to kind of grapple, which wasn't the second edition. And I'm going to see if he wants to play Dungeons and Dragons. The summer before that, we had done a kind of bicycle vacation with some of our friends. We were very young, and we were at a camping, and we didn't have any Dungeons and Dragons stuff, but we had a lot of D6s, and I thought of an adventure that was a lot more mature than the initial adventure that we did, adventures that we did on the primary school, and we had a blast. We had a blast with just a couple of D6s, not knowing any rules, but I still had kind of in my mind how it all worked, and we could play a dwarf, an elf, or a halfling, or a wizard, a rogue, a fighter or a clerk, and those four were human, and the races were kind of the multi-class kind of things. And we really like to buy from a very short list of items whenever we got any gold. And we expanded the rules and everything. But anyway, we did this bicycle holiday where we started playing again, and then we lost sight of it again until this friend entered the school. And then we wanted to expand on our experience, and we discovered that Dungeons and Dragons as the red box wasn't a thing anymore, and there was Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, not the third edition, which is the second edition, but with an upgrade to the quality of the books. And I think there were some revisions in it, but those were just minor. And we bought those books. We bought the Player's Handbook, the Dungeon Master Guide, and the Monster Manual. And I, as the natural dungeon master, so to say, started to throw myself into making it an adventure that, was a lot more than just a dungeon crawl, which we did earlier. Earlier, we just did, you go one square up, one square to the right, one square up, then you come into a room, there is a secret door. You didn't find the secret door, so you can go that way. Then you go a level down, and then you go over 7 squares, and then you start drawing the stairs again, and so on. So that was fun, but and that's what I really wanted to talk about during this episode. We were of a different age. We were 15-year-olds, and we wanted to have another kind of experience, and that became manifest pretty quickly when I did my first real adventure. That was set in my Dark Earth campaign. I don't even know if it was called Dark Earth at that point. It became Dark Earth quite soon after that. I had made a land called Troy, and there was this river that was called Aan de Rotte, which was really a Dutch river that I just put in there. And there was this island full of elves, and there was this town. And actually, in this town, there was a well. No, there was a kind of statue, and that opened once every so many years, and then the players could get in there and were transported to this ghost-like house. The adventure was called The Dark House, and it was this adventure that should have been about going to specific rooms in 3 different nights. The nights lasted as long as you would take in there, and then finally you would have all the keys to unlock a certain chamber on the top and defeat the wizard that was there. But if you didn't get to the wizard before you got there, then you would or didn't get to the wizard before the 3 nights were over, or it would take too long, or you would just die to the monsters, then he would feed on your souls, and you would have no reason to open the statue for another couple of years. So that was my first adventure, and it was a hard lesson because I didn't know how to balance stuff. I had a bard in the party, which is the most memorable because of the fact that everything they encountered was undead and was kind of immune to everything the bard did. So it wasn't very fun for him. And then we had a clerk, and I think we had a fighter, and maybe we had a fighter, I think. And they kind of got through a lot of rooms, and I really did my best. I wrote every room down, and I had introduction text, and I had visions that would happen during certain rooms, which really made for a lively event. But in the end, I put in only 6 magical items, and they would get against 7 levels or something during the adventure. And it wasn't really well balanced, and they at a certain point it wasn't fun to play anymore. But I got for my birthday, I got a box called The Night Below, which I have here, and I showed it on stream a couple of times, which was this box. We got it for 50 gulden. 50 guldens, the old currency, which would be like, 22 euros for now. And I think we had a kind of, maybe 6 or 7 years of playtime out of that single box. It also had free booklets, which were free parts of the adventure that was included. It had a couple of maps, a couple of handouts and everything. And it was great. Or was it? Well, it is during this adventure that I really kind of started to define my dungeon master style. I learned a lot from the encounters that were in there. It's been, Vegel says, it's been so long since I heard that word. I've heard florijnen more than guldens. Yeah. Yeah, it's the old currency, man. We're on euros. We've been on euros for over 20 years now, which is pretty amazing. But I had a big party. It started off with, I think, 6 members, then it went up to 7 at a certain point, and I think we ended with 6 again, besides me as a dungeon master. And I really made an effort to do the introduction pretty well. We started at an inn, and then they went on the road, and they met a hacker on the road, and then they met bandits on the road, and all kinds of things started. I didn't want them to notice when the real adventure would start. That was the thing I was thinking about a lot. I had to make it my own, and I think in a way it was kind of selfish when it came to the adventure, because I wanted to do everything, and everything was in my control. The characters were, although they were developing a lot through the adventure, I was really harsh on the rules. I calculated every experience points to the detail. I was really non-forgiving about hard combats, hard fights, and we had a lot of fun, but I think I would never do that adventure that way again. The other thing is that what I experienced during that whole adventure is that there were these areas in the adventure where there were certain tribes living in the Underdark or just on top of the thing, and I would just include the rough sketches of those areas and introduce only the main things and not really explain the societies that they came upon. But when they came to the Quaggold lair, there were just a lot of Quaggols there, and there was this leader, and when they defeated the leader, the other Quaggols kind of escaped from their scrutiny, and the same went for the Grells that they met there, and all these things. It was with the kind of party things. I talked about the party, the 2 parties that were in there in my previous Jasper's laboratory, when I did a lot of more exposition, and with the big boss and everything, those characters really got a certain amount of attention when I was when I was DMing those. But the things that were in between, I didn't really explore their reason for being there or what the map should look like, because the maps were really raw, so to say. They weren't these beautiful maps as they are now, although I have a lot of things to say about them too. They were just these pages full of brown maps with yellow surroundings, and now and again there was a kind of watery feature there that explained why they could drink stuff. But what I did learn is that the adventure on itself wasn't enough to entertain my players, and I really started to get into the whole making side adventures. Things are happening. 1 sec. Oh, you want to have this one, I think. Okay. And so what I learned is that every one of them had kind of a background. I had my gnome thief illusionist who had a family somewhere living there. I really wanted to go to a magic school to learn more of its art. I had a half-elf who was part of this loving family where the mother was an elf and the father was a human. And they lived on this farm, and they would sometimes go to that place to really get the attention of those parents who were very nice to them. I had a dwarf whose mountain had been destroyed by a kind of titan in the early days, and he was still searching for a home, and he was a cleric of nature, and there was a lot of drama happening there. I had an elven rogue or thief, I must say, because it was second edition, who really got himself into trouble at every turn, and he had darkness in his past, and I really exploited that, or not really exploited it. I really introduced dark stuff and choices into his background that would, trigger him and make him evolve his character. The dwarf that was introduced a bit later, who came from the main capital, which was kind of more civilized. A dwarf used to civilization in a city of millions. I had a combination between a wizard and a priest who was always searching for the best possible ways to do whatever, because he was really into research. I had a druid, but she died earlier in the adventure because of death. There were a lot of party deaths during the adventure as well, and a lot of resurrections as well. But it came at the cost of constitution back then, and loss of experience, which Roger did a topic about on Discord. And I would never do that again. But in those times, I did do that. And you had all the really strange multi-classing rules where an elf couldn't achieve certain levels and a human could, but the humans could dual class and shift classes at a certain level, but then never could return to the other classes and everything. And there was really only one. Was there one human? I don't think there was no human in that party. There were elves, half elves, dwarves, and gnomes, and that was it. It was a really strange party. I don't think I've no, I have not stepped over any of these. And while they were progressing through this dungeon, things would threaten their family or would threaten the country, and the big bad evil of the next campaign was getting hold over the land, and there was this rivalries between a dwarf and an elf that they had to solve. So I added a lot to that adventure, and that made for a campaign that lasted for quite a while. If you consider that we played every Friday, almost every Friday, from 8 o'clock to 4 o'clock in the night, and we lasted and I think we did that for the first 3 years at least, and after that I had to move to another city because I was going to study there. And we finished it in a lesser strenuous schedule. But we had so much hours of fun out of that box, and the other thing is that a lot of things got resolved around the table. Underlying anger issues between the couple of brothers who were at the table, getting to be more adult through those times. We discovered a lot of things through the adventure that we were playing as a group of friends. And that's why that adventure was very formative, so to say. And that's what I still love about those memories I have of that adventure, specifically. So that was kind of the night below for me. Now, of course, at the same time, I was also playing Roger's campaign, and I want to give credit to that because that was a heroic campaign with a magnificent story that lasted for a long, long time. I think we finished it in 2010 or 11 even. I'm not going to talk about that because I really want to talk about my Dungeon Master experience. Although the thing that it did for me was that I also knew what I wanted to copy from another Dungeon Master and what I wanted to not do compared to the other Dungeon Master. So, seeing other Dungeon Masters at work also helps you develop your own style as well, and makes you understand what you want to do and not want to do. So that was the night below, and it ended in the other town that I was at, and I would still go back to Dordrecht, which is the city I'm living in, to play as my character. But the dungeon mastering really wasn't a thing anymore, because they would all have to get to me, or I would have to go there. But I was studying as well, and although the train ride wasn't that long, I had to develop friendships there as well. So those times came with a kind of sense of loneliness as well. Again, I didn't have anyone to play with. I think I could have started to play with another group, but in my mind, my Dungeons and Dragons friends were in Dordrecht and not in Breda, which was the city that I was living in. And that made for a really strange time, because I could have started up a new thing, but instead I just started developing a whole new world in my head, a whole campaign, which I did. I had started it already in Dordrecht, but and it did a one-shot kind of thing in there. I just started developing this world, and finally I found Roleplay Online, RPOL. .net, which was a great site for text-based Dungeons and Dragons, and I started writing there. And I can spell, but I'm a really sloppy writer, and I had a lot of difficulties conveying the story in the way I wanted it. I always made shortcuts and text and everything, and still we got over 10,000 posts, I think, in the biggest adventure I did, and over 4,000 in one of the smaller ones. And I did a lot of other things, because I had a lot, which had a lot of to do with escapism. I wanted to. I was neglecting my studies and doing this rather than building miniatures, because I was in art school, or not miniatures, decors and chairs and stuff. And models. And I really wanted to live in this world, so I joined a lot of campaigns. And by then I was playing 3rd edition, and I was discovering these 45 5th level characters with epic gear and how you could build them. And I learned a lot about balancing stuff. And at the same time, I was developing my Urter campaign, which was kind of my masterpiece back then, because it was my whole own cosmology, and it had a whole kind of language that supported the content of that world. And it was kind of another field than my Dark Earth campaign that I had developed before. My Dark Earth campaign really was part of the multiverse as we know it, and I was playing Planescape as well. I had all the books and stuff, so I was incorporating that into the story as well. I learned about Paleon, Arborea, the Nine Hells, Orbator, the city of Sigil, and I was really immersed in that whole setting, and I incorporated everything that I could into my campaign. But Urter was my own baby, so to say, and I really liked what I did there. And at the same time, I had this idea that the main thing that was happening in the world, I was never going to implement that in any part of an adventure that I would be playing with the characters in that. It would be the backdrop of things that were happening in current events, so to say. And it was kind of a philosophical campaign as well, because memories were strange. Things were inhabiting the rocks, the trees and stuff, which made nature really important things compared to the things that destroyed nature. So kind of modern theme. There was this kind of... I had developed different eras, so that I knew that when a character would pass through time, then I would know what was happening in the other eras and stuff. And I created a lot of cool non-playing characters that I'm still DMing to this day. Man, I have to take a sip of water. And what this period for me did as Dungeon Master is that I discovered that you could incorporate a lot of things into Dungeons and Dragons, all kind of moral dilemmas and stuff. And stuff that doesn't explain a lot of things, right? Things like what does time really do to a certain settlement? What does it mean to be disconnected from the flow of time? Why are gods gods? Where do you get your powers from? And that kind of stuff. It was really elaborate and made a whole cosmology around it with spirit worlds and ethereal planes and heavens and hells and the void and the fullness and stuff. And I really got into this lore. And I liked it. I liked it very much, but I think that this is kind of a trap as well for a Dungeon Master because it was so detailed and there were so many things that were kind of a backdrop that a character could kind of get lost in this world, and you didn't really have that sense of you could lose your sense of realism while you were playing this setting. In the meantime, I was also sometimes going back to Dordrecht and we were doing 1001 Rooms adventures, which was kind of you enter a new room and when you survive 3 rooms, you go level up and every room was having a more difficult encounter. And we were playing this with 4 to 10 players or something at the start, but it definitely grew out of it. It became very big at a certain point and players were developing characters in a way that they had role-playing aspects to them as well. And so we shifted from 1001 Rooms to Stromhold City State, which was kind of a hub on my Dark Earth campaign again, where there was this city state where adventurers would come and get contracts and do this contract and got their reward and went on to the next contract. But there was a lot of role-playing in between and it got more complicated over time as some characters kept living between adventures, which was amazing because it was really hard and I still get the angry glares at me sometimes for how hard I have been on some characters. There was this guy who was now a DM as well, who recently said to me, you must really have disliked me because you killed me on my first session like 1 hour in and I had never played Dungeons and Dragons before. And I was kind of laughing, but it's really sad, of course, to do that to a new player. But anyway, you have to learn. Stromhold City State got in between like 8 to 20 players in a single session, and we would play from dawn to after midnight, and we would often have 1 or 2 encounters because they were so big. There was so much happening in these encounters. I had an encounter on a boat with a kind of kraken, but it was really an exponentially big kraken with a lot of other mechanics around it. I had a monolith, I had mirror creatures, I had a whole mind flayer invasion, all these kinds of things that happened after each other and kind of developed in a story because there was all... this could only happen in Stromhold because there was this ruler, Lord Strom, who kept an eye out over the city, and when things got too bad, he would intercede, so to say, kind of like the Lady of Pain, but more physical, not with that amount of power. So that kind of developed over times, and that was a thing where I could let go of the stuff that I was doing. I just did the encounter. We had a lot of fun during the day, and when it was the end of the encounter or end of the day, we just would leave it there for like a month or 2 months or 3 months, and that was kind of it was a relaxing kind of Dungeons and Dragons, and it kind of made me think of what I wanted to do with my whole Dungeon Master thing. By then I had to let go of experience points. I didn't do that anymore. And in fifth, of course, the milestone rule is more often applied, I think, than the experience thing. Experience is only used to calculate encounters, but then again, that doesn't really work as well. So that's the thing. But this was still third edition Dungeons and Dragons, and the rules are very difficult. Well, they are very simple, but they can be expanded upon with so many options that it gets really complicated when you start really doing a deep delve into that setting. So there was this kind of, because I want to have things mathematically right. When I'm building a monster, I want things to make sense. The to hit has to be related to the number of hit dice. The number of hit points has to correspond to Constitution modifier and the number of hit points. And this was really a thing in third edition where you could add rules and make a really complicated monster with all these guidelines that you got from the monster manual and all kind of other sources, and it would make sense in the end, and you would have a monster that was challenging and was still based on logical rules. So there were a lot of cool things that happened in third edition, but the problem was the exponential growth of your character, where you really had to consider what their next upgrade would be to defeat the next thing, and what the next thing would have to really still be able to confront the characters. So that was a difficulty that came with that third edition and that simplistic kind of play. With the campaign, the difficulty became that the campaign was really was a difficult setting to play in, I think. Although it might not have felt that way for my players. I hope it didn't. Yeah, so that was happening, and it was online, so it was always a bit strange. But then in 2008, I moved back to Dordrecht, and well, not soon after, but a while after that, I started up a new Urtur campaign, which was still a difficult story, but I think it made sense in a more normal way, at least at the start. It got more complicated while it developed, but at the start it was kind of go here, go there, get your invitation to the party. Why does the invitation got declined and that kind of stuff. But at the same time, it's also the campaign where I really learned to prepare the long game. And the long game, 9 years later now, still hasn't played out to its fullest. And I'm, as you might all know, I'm a kind of a Lost fan, because that didn't happen there as well for a long time. And I'm not talking about the whole repeat of the previous episode at the start of every episode and the long titling at the end of it, and then just a few minutes of content in between. That was annoying as hell, but I think they fixed that with season 4. But I mean that you never get the real answer to your question until you're really deep in. I could drop lore and lore and lore on my player characters, but and always from the perspectives of the characters they would meet, but that wouldn't give them the answer to the biggest thing that was happening to them, and they still don't have that answer for now. But there were a lot of throwbacks in there. It's kind of the I'm not comparing per se, but the Matthew Mercer effect, where in episode 100 you suddenly get a throwback to episode 20, and everyone is going like, "What? I didn't understand it when that was happening in real time." But I understand now, and I did that a lot. I think in my first session, something happened with the deer that our druid had in that party, and much later it became clear why the deer did what he did. And there were a lot of those things that started to make sense in later later sessions. So this is the campaign where I really learned to play the long game. And then next to that one, which was a bi-weekly campaign, I did another bi-weekly campaign, and that was set in my Dark Earth campaign as well. Again, I mean, and I think that when I started that one, I had 5 players at the start, and I really wanted to have an easy adventure, so to say. There was a city, there was a big bad evil guy doing a thingy, and it would develop into a confrontation with the big bad evil guy. It was also a thing where I combined a couple of things better than I think I did in Urtur. Well, not differently. This is the campaign where I started to connect backgrounds with things that were happening in the world somewhat more. For example, one of the characters was the son of a guy who they should really not have trusted. The scion in the party was from another dimension. There was a non-playing character who stayed with them for quite a while and was kind of integral to the party. And when he died, it was kind of sad. There was a clerk who had a whole background in fighting in the streets and everything, and at the same time being really rich, which played into future events a lot. And there was a gnome who really wasn't a gnome, but he was a set of lenses that got smacked into a gnomish body, which he discovered much later on. Which kind of made him immortal unless the lenses were destroyed, but which also had some complications because he wasn't really who he was supposed to be. And I really set that up easy, but it became kind of a sandbox pretty soon when such dark things were starting to happen that they got aid through a friend who set them back in time and restarted the adventure in a kind of way. And that was a really fun experience because they started to make different choices because they knew what was going to happen and they thought they were really in control. But the world started reacting to that immediately as well. And a whole lot of other kinds of complications followed out of that meddling with time and explaining what they knew about the big bad evil guy to the big bad evil guy per accident, for example. And then they started shifting dimensions and doing other timey things, and then they had a total party kill, and I had to deal with that, and that was really sad, but it was the most logical point to shift to 5th edition, because that had been out for quite a while, and I wanted to play that. And with 5th edition, I think I let go even more of kind of the 3.5 edition frustration of building up to these really difficult encounters in these big stats and everything, and to keep it balanced and give everybody an option to do something in combat, and go back to a more relaxed style of confronting players with monsters, which has its pros and cons, by the way, again. And this is what I'm trying to do through this talk that I'm having with you, is that there are a lot of good things happening, but there are also a lot of things that I kept discovering. So if you have any questions, by the way, chat, just ask them. If you want me to explain something about what I'm saying, just ask me, because I will be gladly explain it. Sip of water. Whew. Anyway, I shifted to 5th edition with that party, and we had decided with the other party to also shift to 5th edition. And where I think it really helped me in the kind of sandboxy time shifting past and present Dark Earth campaign, I had more difficulty with the party in the Urtur campaign, which also had kind of time travel in it and complicated subplots and other events that happened before and after and stuff, because there had more difficulty to make the encounters hard enough, which annoyed me somewhat at times. And I think this really is a thing about 5th edition. It's so non-lethal. Yeah, of course you can die. We had a death on the Precipice of Dreams earlier on. But it's really hard to kill someone unless you're trying really, really hard. once somebody is dropped on the ground, you should have this thing on your arm that sends out 3 beams that always hit and do a single point of damage to just get rid of the death saving throws, because otherwise healing word is really doing the trick for you every time. And not only healing words, other kinds of healing things or features or whatever. It's so difficult to really kill someone compared to, for example, first edition or especially second edition, where you would die pretty quickly if you didn't mind anything. But there are a lot of cool things as well. Concentration is a great addition. Just having Bless up or another buff is a significant choice that you can make at first level, and it stays significant until 20th level, so to say. Bless will always be good, and that's what I really like about 5th edition. The flavor of every class is really good, but yeah, there are pros and cons to that. And the other things is that you learn new stuff as well as a dungeon master doing these things. So what I really learned about from my sandboxy Dark Earth campaign is that I can make things too difficult to still be comprehended by my characters. I have this amazing memory in my head, but not all players have this, and especially in that party, the long-term memories aren't that good as mine are. Which is to say that they are bad, but mine are just so really good. So when I'm saying to you that, that happened 4 years ago, you were in this alley and this happened, and they can't keep up with that, especially because they shifted dimension 2 times and shifted time and started a whole new character. In the meantime, well, the main bad guy is now the secondary bad guy and has a reflection of itself that does good things, but not in the other world and stuff. It can get complicated, and overcomplicating is really a thing that I have to be careful about. But with what I did pretty well in that party, I think, is getting them together as a party. There was no real even when there was distrust, especially after the total party kill, they became party quite quickly because they were in these amazing situations together, which lasted like a combat that lasted for a session on a boat, which really brought them together as a party. And they had a lot of goals still in this living world that they could accomplish together. So that was the great thing that came out of that. The other party, I think, I don't know if I actually referred to this on the stream of the Precipice of Dreams yesterday, but what I learned from that campaign is that it can be a bit daunting if you, as a dungeon master, have the world collapse around your characters the whole time. This can become kind of a thing that numbs the players over time, and that's the thing I've been struggling with in that campaign, keeping the light in the game, so to say. So that's the thing that I've learned from that thing. And then I got to my latest party, which I got a call from a friend who was an employee of me when I was working at this other work, and he said, I have this friend group, we always come together on a certain day, and we want to do one session of Dungeons and Dragons. Could you be our dungeon master, because we really would like that. And I remember making like 5th edition short sheets, having prepped a small adventure with started at an inn, a zombie that came in, and then they had to discover where the zombie came from, talk with the wife, get into a crypt, get to the big bad evil guy who was making an army of zombies, so to say. And that was kind of the one shot. But I distinctly remember sitting down at this table and starting to talk about Dungeons and Dragons to these players that had never played this game before, and that ignited a new kind of flame for this cool game in me, which really wanted to show them that you could do everything, but also everything has a consequence at the same time. And what was supposed to be a one shot became a free shot, and I got this mug from them. and they all got their own mug as well, which was a really cool gift. And pum pum. I'm doing the stuff. There I go again. Am I back? No, because I haven't done this yet. Yes, I'm back. Okay, I'm really getting very annoyed by Discord right now. It's back, I think. Yeah. So the love for this party that had never played before started to extend beyond this third episode. Hello. When they asked me to be their dungeon master, and I'm DMing for their them once a month, mostly on a Friday, and I'm having a blast. But I've also they sponsor me, kind of. Let's put it that way, and that really made me think of what I wanted to give them during a session, and that's where I really learned to try to when you have one session a month and you really want to keep them connected to the story that you're telling, you have to think of them as a group where everybody has to shine during an episode, so to say. And of course, not everybody can shine every episode as all the other characters do, but you can make it so that the story is relevant to all of them. So, and I learned what I could do to make better, make a campaign that did this for these characters. And so I intertwined their backgrounds a lot. There are a lot of things that are connected to different people, their backgrounds, even though it's not always that obvious why this is the case. And this is where one character would really, I say, well, you meet this character on the street, and then you see this player talk to this character as like saying, "Oh, hello, there you are again." And another player going wide-eyed because he knows something about that character that the other one doesn't know, but he can't tell because if he tells, then he would spoil some stuff, you know. And seeing these faces at the table reacting to all these characters that we through those different backgrounds during 12 sessions a year, that's been a lot of fun for me to really think about how you can make an adventure that involves them both, but not through a kind of Deus Ex Machina. Make it personal, but make it personal in a logical way. And this has always been a kind of a thing that I really want to do in every campaign. Things that happen to the characters should be logical, even if for some reason they're all in it together and everything is connected. I always, when I watch series where the group gets thrown together by accident, and it doesn't make sense because, if the two parties start in both sides of America and come together in the middle of America, and that's the focus of the movie, then that isn't the bad thing for me. But them all meeting up in the same. I had this problem with what was the show again? With the vampire thing is this train, where they meet in this gas station, and I was thinking, this is so illogical that they should all be here. I know that it isn't supportive of the plot that they would all be there, something like that. I might watch it back again, and I might have a different opinion, but those kind of things can really bother me. So this adventure has taught me to really think about how things should come together and what these things mean to the characters. But I'll be going into that one the next episode, where I'll explain all the characters that are in that campaign, how I prepared for all their backgrounds and how they are intertwined, and what kind of adventure I've been developing there. We've been playing for 3 years now, which sounds like a long time, but we've had 36 sessions, so to say. I think we are nearing 40 now, which for some can be done in a year. But they are level 9, and they are kind of through the first act, and I want to do the next Jasper's Laboratory about this first act and how I developed that adventure. But what I've learned about so when I look back to all these things that because I did a lot of more one shots and I did a lot of more silly things. I did a whole lot of things on airpole.net because I joined a lot of adventures there. I did a Call of Cthulhu game. I did a Ember game for a small part because they always fail after a while, which is really annoying. I DM'd a lot of things. I DM'd a lot of arenas as well, which were great but hard to maintain. I did a very big adventure with 12 parties in a single thread, but well, that failed, of course, because one group was going way too fast and I had no time to do everything in between my studies because I was studying at the time. So I did a whole lot of other things besides these adventures. But what I think I've learned, the funny thing is that when you say that you would do things differently now, that of course is a true statement, but from your own perspective, from your current perspective, and not from the perspective that you were where you were then. And one of the great examples, for example, which I have always found difficult, is how you treat a goblin when you're a teenager, how you treat a goblin when you're in your 20s, and when you're in your 30s and you're, well, I'm not in my 40s yet, but I'm getting there. Because now, in my latest adventure, the goblins have fled their own society and are living in this wizard tower that the party has to get the stuff out of, and they kind of they decided to work together to a common goal. But in my first adventures, they were cannon fodder. And in between, when I started to write more of the history of my Dark Earth campaign, I really had to think of a reason why, with all the exody and the sinking of a continent, and why would they be one of the more hated races? You know, I had to explain that to myself to make it logical that they were the ones that were being kicked at, you know. And it's kind of a bit easier on gnolls because they would just eat you, but these goblins, they are just such pathetic creatures how they are described. Why would you want to kick them while they're already down? And these times, although in my latest adventure I specifically did the good goblin kind of thing because I wanted to teach my players something, I would not hesitate anymore to just make an evil tribe of goblins, which can be cannon fodder, because sometimes you have to put morals aside, and that's one of the learning curves that went into that thing. The other thing is that not everybody is me, and I've changed as well through the time that I've been a dungeon master, and so you don't want to make things too complicated, but if I make things too simple, I won't be enjoying myself. So there has to be a middle ground to that as well. And the other thing is, how will you involve your character backgrounds into the story? How would you introduce them? How would you develop them through their careers? And how do you make the adventure relevant? And what do your players want out of that? That has become a lot more important through the times. And at the same time, I'm a very directive dungeon master where I just say, no, you can't do this. And at other times I really go with the flow and say, of course you can. And all these extremes on both sides of yourself being a dungeon master are so important to become aware of, that you're doing it in a certain manner, because when you do, you can improve on them or let them go. Even there are some things I just wouldn't do anymore. And I started my Urtun campaign with a harsh scene, which was kind of an attack on a woman in an alley. And I don't think I would ever do that again in the story, because it makes myself very uncomfortable, and I don't have this experience. And I'm not saying that you have to have the experience to put something like that in your adventure, but why? Why, when there are such other things that you can develop with your characters? And although this has only been a minor thing and was to set up a kind of clash between two parties, which eventually got resolved after 7 years, because we started over 8 years, because we started 7 years later, and you can do that in a whole lot of other things, and those are still things I'm learning. And I think you are learning that at a certain curve, because you're experiencing things in your real life that have something to do with those things. Not specifically, but for example, there might be things happening in the world that revolve around all kinds of things, a war or hashtag Me Too, for example, or now with the cancel culture or stuff. These things are or a pandemic. And you want and this sets itself into your mind, and you want to do something with that. And it doesn't really have to be a pandemic or cancel culture, but it has to do something around that subject matter that seeps into your adventure. And I think that's a good thing, because it just means that you have started thinking about something new for yourself, or maybe something old, I don't know. And the other thing is politics. There's in-game politics and there's real-life politics. There's racism in-game, there's racism out-of-game, and those things are not the same. Because, for example, in the Precipice of Dreams, we have a bird person with us, and we make a lot of jokes about him. And this kind of reflects the dialogue that's happening in the world. But at the same time, it isn't, because we're having fun, and he's really developing his own Avarin character in a way that makes sense, and that's really friendly, and that gives us another look. And the other thing is, we aren't harsh to him. We're just... let's not continue this one, because there are so many nuances. But it's nice to develop your own mind when you're doing these kind of things that you're not really a part of, but want to understand from a certain point of view. And the other big things that have been an influence, of course, are Critical Role, or people like Matt Colville, who each have their own way of being a dungeon master, have triggered a lot of positive and some negative things in Dungeons and Dragons culture, have been about inclusivity, which I really love. I really like that part of the Dungeons and Dragons community, how it has developed. I really like the diversity and the people who are part of this culture. I don't know. But it also, besides that, Matthew Mercer has learned us how to elaborate on every single piece of furniture in an inn. While Matthew Colville did My Night Below, the module that I showed you, 3 times a year, which I can't imagine, because we spent 50 weeks a year playing 8-hour sessions, sometimes doing marathon or doing an extra session for at least 3 years in that capacity, and then afterwards we went a bit slower. But and he does it 3 times a year. that's a different kind of Dungeons and Dragons game than that I'm used to. My current campaigns are running 3, 9, and 10 years, I think, and those are long, and they are bi-weekly, 3 to 4 hour sessions, and I like those long campaigns. But at the same time, I want to tell more stories, so I'm kind of envious of how he is able to put these sessions into. Put a whole 3 adventures into a year's worth of sessions. And then you have the Matthew Mercer, who does 4-hour sessions, sometimes 5, sometimes 3. And he plays every week, which means that in a 3-year campaign is about 150 sessions, maybe a bit fewer with some holidays in between. And that, for me, would be a 6-year campaign. And when I see how he levels up his characters and the way he does this, I'm thinking of, oh well, that's a way how I can maintain my own style of long campaigns, but at the same time go to an ending that is kind of obvious and is coming within a certain amount of time. So we learn from the things that we watch. We learn from the things that we play. I love playing Bowen right now, which is such a complicated character, which has things that I have that are part of me in those characters, and at the same time explore things that I see in my surroundings again, like how my kids react to certain things, or how honesty can really bring you hurt instead of pleasure, so to say. And I think the really funny thing is that it really plays into Roger's campaign as well. So that's kind of my story from Dungeons and Dragons from 11 years old to now, which I wanted to discuss in this episode of Jasper's Laboratory. Then we'll do my Edra Moore mystery party that is my monthly campaign. We'll do that. I'll discuss that the next time. I really go into what I've done to bring them to the point where they are now, and then I'll be doing the next session after that. I'll be doing the preparation of my next session with them. So you will really see me making decisions on what to prepare and what not to prepare, and what this looks like, and that kind of stuff. Yeah, so that's the end of this episode. We had a lot of microphone trouble at the start. I really have to look into that because it worries me greatly. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Chat is listening quietly, I think. Did you enjoy it, chat? Hopefully there will be an answer. No, there will be an answer. I know that some people are still there. Yeah, I was lurking, lol. Well, thanks for lurking. We loved it. Oh, well, Ashley, thanks so much. I hope it was kind of informative as well. I really wanted to tell this story because, as I said in the not aired, same here, it was a good listen, thank you. Not aired, I think that will not be aired on YouTube because there were so many mic problems, but I really wanted to tell you where I came from to explain what I'm doing right now, compared to the kind of shorthand Jasper's Laboratory things that I've done so far, which I also like and which I will continue, but at a later point. Yes, says Detlef. Thanks for joining us, Detlef. Thanks for joining us all. Nice to see you, Top Down Tabletop. Did the trailer twice this time. So, yeah, well, love to have had you here. Thanks for joining me, and see you in 2 weeks on this show, but next Monday with Top Down Tabletop and Ashley and Eric and Michel. And Top Down Tabletop, I have to say Shanks and Vix, of course, and Eric, Michel, and me from the Voidcast on a very cool episode of. And then I forgot the name again. Anyway, why does this happen to me? Put it in chat, Ash. What's the name of it again? The game. I mean, I know what I'm playing, so that's not. something Outlaws. Yeah. Well, Parallel Projections. Yes, that's the show for certain. Top-down tabletop. Dutch City Outlaws. Yeah. Why can't I remember that? I don't know. Which yeah. Anyway, thanks for joining us all. Epic. Well, thanks, Vechel. Be seeing you soon. Goodbye. Good evening. Doodaloo.